I told you I'll be back. And welcome to Chris Reyes Reviews. This year is filled with sequels and reboots to quite a few beloved franchises, and in this episode we are going to look at Terminator Genisys. So without further ado, let's get to it. Terminator Genisys is set in the future after Judgment Day. John Connor is the leader of the human resistance, and with a group of soldiers, they take out Skynet, the evil computer that almost wiped out the human race. But before that, Skynet sends a Terminator through the time machine to kill John's mother, Sarah Connor. So to save her, John sends his right-hand man, Kyle Reese, through the time machine. This all sounds familiar. But things don't go as planned when Kyle encounters an already prepared Sarah with a Terminator Guardian awaiting his arrival. Together, they team up and must defeat a new threat that Skynet created to ensure its existence. This movie is really busy. In fact, it's too busy. It's already hard to describe the plot. Let's start with the concept. The story we know from the James Cameron movies have changed. We all know this from the trailers. They're basically doing what J.J. Abrams did to Star Trek to restart the franchise. In that manner, I give this movie some credit for not feeling like another mediocre add-on like the last two films. And they were trying something different, but it's got problems. Time traveling became confusing. The fact that Sarah has a guardian Terminator means that he was sent further back into the past from some point further in the future. You would think the movie would go in depth with this, but it doesn't. Nor does it with any of the Terminators Skynet sends to kill Sarah. What's also frustrating is that since we are dealing with an alternate timeline, the events from the previous films are irrelevant to this story. Those studios really need to be careful on using time travel to reboot a franchise, because it's a double-edged sword. If it's confusing, it will backfire. And what's sad is that the trailers revealed a lot of major plot twists, so that when they happened, they just weren't as shocking. But let's just say I hadn't seen any of the trailers. That still doesn't stop the fact that this movie left a lot of unanswered questions. They were implying that they would make more films to answer those plot holes, but that just feels like a cheap way to continue this franchise. And I'm just still bummed how we are 5 movies in and we still haven't seen John Connor grow from a young man into the savior of the human race. We've only seen Nick Stahl as the reluctant loner and Christian Bale as an angry soldier. I will give props to the filmmakers for studying and recreating certain scenes that happened in the original. They were really close. Also, just thank God those characters weren't Jurassic World stupid. Probably the best thing in this movie was the relationship between Sarah and her guardian Terminator. It's almost reminiscent of John Connor's relationship with his Terminator in T2. And I stress almost, because in that movie, we saw John bond with that T-800 throughout the entire story, whereas in this movie, the bond is already established. If we had seen the start of this relationship form, then that would have made certain emotional moments much more powerful. Overall, this movie is very comparable to Jurassic World. You can tell it's made by people who loved the original movies in the franchise, but it's just not nearly as impactful or as enjoyable. Maybe there's a reason why James Cameron stopped making Terminator movies, because he probably foresaw that they just weren't going to be as good. Because Terminator Genisys is a meh. It's slightly better than Jurassic World, but that's not saying much. Before we wrap up, I'd just like to know, what's your favorite moment from the Terminator franchise? My personal favorite is when the T-1000 walks through the metal bars in the mental asylum, and then he just stops because his gun wasn't made out of liquid, so it couldn't pass through the metal bars, so he has to just adjust his hand to pass it through. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe, and instead of the more formal hasta luego, how about hasta la vista, baby.